Hey everybody, hope you're well. I just got back in from the range. Over the past week, I've been doing quite an extensive test with the 170 ballistic tips in my 6.8 Western. So let me take you guys through what I found. I should also mention while I was reloading for this bullet, I found out that it's pretty sensitive to seating depths, and I'll show you in a little bit. And I've also learned that my usual 60 grains of 48, 31 shortcut, yeah, my 60 grains have probably been a little too hot. And the reason why I say that is because I've got about a handful of brass on the floor there that all their primer pockets are just stretched out. They won't hold a primer anymore. And they've had about 3 or 4 firings on them. So that kind of made me rethink how I'm going to reload for these Noslers. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So without boring you guys too much, the way I went about it was I found the number at which the bullet contacted the lands. That was 2.390. Then I set up a scale for bullet jump. Started with 5,000s, 15,000s, 40,000s, and 65,000s. And I took 58.5 grains and worked that up to 61.5 grains. That was based off of what I used with the Hammer Hunters. And in a nutshell, the 15 to 22 thousandths, so this gap here, provided the best groups and standard deviation. So I kind of worked within this window, and I ultimately came up with, so you can see these groups here, it's a 791, it's an inch group, 809, 912. And this is like 2783, and then up to 60.5 was 2871. So right around that 2800 to 2850-ish range with this powder. And so I took the best group at 15,000, which is 60 grains, and this worked really well with the Hammer Hunters. And I just seeded it a little deeper to 20 thousandths instead of 15 thousandths, and it produced this group here. It was 0.483, 2840 was the velocity. And I was like, okay, let's stick with this and do some more testing with it. Well, this is what I found with this guy. So this is my 100-yard group, and I'm going to tell you this is how I knew that the 60 grains was just too hot for this round, and why I may have been loading a little too hot in the previous case. These are two different groups. So this is, that's one group and then it's shot there, right? So these are kind of two different groups. So once to group 2 different times. It looks like a great group, but let me show you when you magnify it. And this is 2 other examples I did with the 60 grains. See, it wants to group here. So there's a little group there and then a group there. Same thing over here. 2 in one hole, and then it wants to throw 2 over here. Then you magnify that out to 300 yards, and this was just a 300-yard 3-shot group. It's a 4-inch group, so well over 1 MOA. And then you throw it out to 800 yards. That was my 850-yard group. That was 10 inches, so well over 1 MOA. And then also, just another 4th example. This is with the 60 grains at that same seating depth, and this was at 500 yards. And you can see it's grouping 2 different spots. So here's that's a good group, but then it groups over here. So that's kind of the story, to where at 100 yards, it was throwing 2 groups, and it just magnified it to where it was just garbage out at long distance. So this is what I did to fix that issue. All right, I fixed my problem by going back to my original load development chart here. And I looked at 59.5, and the group was really uniform. Even 58.5, the group was really uniform. And in fact, the group on this was a little smaller than this one. But I liked the velocity bump with the 59.5. So what I did was I went from 15 thousandths bullet jump, and I went down to, I seeded it another 8 thousandths of an inch. So now I'm at 2.368. And so that is with 15 thousandths bullet jump. I did the regroup over here when I seeded it down a little deeper to 22 thousandths bullet jump. And here we have a 0.66 inch group. still a really good uniform group, and my velocity was 2850-ish. So good velocity, good group. So I said, let's shoot this at 545 yards, and this is what we got. It magnified it out to still be a nice uniform group. It's a little on the bigger side, 3.5 inches, but it's 0.6 MOA at that distance. So I just want to compare that with the hammer hunters that I had shot. I had a few left over, and I was like, I'm just going to shoot at 500 yards with the hammer hunters and just compare it. And this was a 2.75 inch group at 500 yards. So these things are still awesome. These things are super accurate in my rifle, but I just wanted something that I could shoot as a secondary load that was a little cheaper to shoot than the all copper hammer hunters. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got going on here. Yeah, so I guess in a nutshell, I just want to let you guys know that if you guys want to use this powder, I would recommend starting between 58 and about 61 grains. I would work within that window. I would also work within I would say the 15 to 30 thousandths bullet jump range. I think that would give you guys, give you guys enough room to kind of work a load in for your rifle if you guys are interested in using this load. Not as accurate as the hammer hunters, but it's a much cheaper bullet to shoot. And I think you guys might be shooting better than I am, but I think it would be a great, primary load. But if you're really nitpicky, it would be a really good secondary load. So I would just say work within that window there. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. Like I said, I shot 100 rounds. I put a lot of groups on paper. I got a lot of numbers. So I didn't want to bore you guys with everything that I found. I just wanted to highlight what what the rifle ultimately didn't like and what it did like, and kind of what I found my previous reloading practices with loading a hot round with the 60 grains of that powder kind of did with my brass. So if you're going to load your brass up pretty hot, expect about 3 or 4 firings maybe before your primer pockets start stretching out. And if you guys see that you guys are getting 2 groups at 100 yards, like that rounds grouping 2 different groups, probably suspect that you're using a little too much powder and you're getting a pretty hot round. So you might back that off a little bit. And that's what I did. I backed it off by half a grain, and the groups uniformed out. And yeah, it's not the tightest, but man, it's really predictable out at those longer distances. So yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. As always, please comment. And this is in the comments. I'll answer your comments. I really do appreciate you guys subscribing to the channel. It's been awesome. It's been a good motivation for me to get out and shoot and kind of upload some more content for you guys. So thanks again. You guys have a great weekend.